As a Christian working woman, you have many roles, from your responsibility with family and friends to community and work. How do you connect all that you do with all that you are and still have your faith shine through? It's a challenge, but you are up to it. The She Works for Him podcast is the gathering place to empower Christian working women to live out their calling at work by connecting them to God, resources, and each other through powerful faith stories from other working sisters in Christ. Welcome to She Works for Him.
You've tuned in to She Works for Him, where we are connecting Christian working women to God, resources, and one another. We're your hosts, Martha Brangenberg and Catherine Gates, and you can find us online at sheworksforhim.com and on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and a YouTube channel. It's She Works for Him. That's She Works, the number 4 Him. Thank you for being with us today. Now let's get to the show.
Our Western culture is filled with messages that encourage us to make a name for ourselves, to do it our way, to live according to our truth. We hear, if it's to be, it's up to me. And that influences us to think that we have to make things happen under our own strength, based on our own abilities and depending on our own knowledge. But that's not how God designed us to be. Sabrina Donley has watched her parents start 10 different businesses and 3 ministries, always looking to God for direction, strength, and resources. She's seen them face hard times and great success, yet all the while partnering with and trusting God for wisdom. And Sabrina is following their lead. Sabrina works for CybrCastle as the second generation in her family's business. Her focus is serving small to mid-sized organizations defending themselves against cyber attacks. Sabrina is also passionate about equipping the next generation to live purposely and bridge divides, which is so important right now. She advises the young professional ministry of our good friends at Work on Purpose, otherwise known as AWOP. In her off hours, Sabrina enjoys rock climbing, theater, and sci-fi. She met her husband, Derek, in China, where she lived for a few years. Sabrina, welcome to She Works for Him.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
Sabrina, we're going to talk about how you connect your faith to your work and what that looks like for you. But I'd love for you to share first how you became a follower of Jesus.
Yes, happy to. So I grew up my parents were Christians. They were kind of first generation Christians in their family. And I did have the absolute privilege to go to a fantastic Christian school when I was growing up. I accepted Christ in chapel when I was about 5 years old. And I think I understood what it meant. I knew who Jesus was. I felt like I talked to him. But it was really after turning, I'd say 13 or 14 and experiencing some challenges of jealousy, sibling rivalry, all that fun stuff, where I started to realize, man, maybe I don't understand this love thing as much as I think I do. Maybe I need to learn what love is through Christ. So I just recommitted my life, but that's where I really started to go deeper and ask him to be Lord of my life in everything.
When you say you started to go deeper, what did that look like for you?
Oh, it was a complete surrender when I was 13, actually. I had been a typical kind of teenager of getting myself into some relationship stuff that was, it was fine from a world's perspective, but it really wasn't love as God's love is. And I kind of learned the hard way from that. And I'm like, God, I need to read who you are in your word. What does your word say about this? What do you say about this? I want to be able to talk to you. And so I think for almost 4 years straight, I read my Bible every single day, 13 to age 16. I'm like, man, where did I get that commitment? I sometimes have a hard time doing that now, but that's where I got such a deep relationship with God. I almost tuned everything else out, which not always the best thing, but at the time that really helped me deepen my relationship. And I think for where I am today in the business world, that's kind of how I approach things as well. So yes.
That's amazing. So how does that translate into how you seek God at work?
So I would say that I started realizing how much work meant to God when I would say, out of college. You had mentioned I've been a part of my family's business for a long time, saw them doing cool stuff, was really inspired by them, but saw some challenges of workaholism in my family. And even though following God's principles, sometimes putting work as an idol and those things, and then seeing the consequences of that, even my own family or companies that we worked with. And so it was really, again, I'm like, God, I think I'm supposed to do work with you. And I think so, but is work just a curse? It seems like it. I don't know. And it was really, again, like submitting to him. I'm like, God, show me what your plan is for that. Again, like total submission. And then step by step, him showing me what he wanted me to see and do. And so I feel like I'm walking in that now, which is pretty cool.
So as you connect your faith in your work, how do you see that benefit the community around you because of it?
Oh, absolutely. CybrCastle and really how we started, we basically just stewarded the idea that God gave us, which was cybersecurity, serving the most underserved in a field that there's some areas of the world or business, it's kind of gray. You're like, this could be good, this could be bad. Cybersecurity, it's pretty black and white. There's evil, cyber criminals that want to steal, kill, and destroy, right? There's a lot of parallels to spiritual warfare as well. And then there's protecting those companies and those livelihoods, employees, generations, and such. So then going in with that perspective of how do we really serve the next generation in our community? And how do we create collaboration among organizations that already exist? And ultimately, how do we serve those? How do we democratize this so more people can access this? And how can we just serve the community overall? So I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it sounds like you really were being intentional in asking a lot of really hard questions.
Yes.
And saying, how do we do this and who is it going to benefit? So was it really a conversation more around, instead of just a business that's profitable and their bottom line, like a conversation of flourishing for those that you interact with?
Very much so. I'd say we also initially, in a lot of our connection, was interestingly through the AWOP, at Work on Purpose community, and striving to help, especially those that are purpose-driven. I think there's a lot of things that can affect the longevity of a business. That could be disaster. That could be like a cyber attack, could be a disaster. That could be spiritual things. That could be family things. And so we really did want to be like that piece in that puzzle to help them flourish, and do it in a way that, again, seeing it almost on a spiritual level, like spiritual warfare, spiritual protection. Now, it's not always how we talk about it with our customers. If they're Christians, it's fantastic. But otherwise, it's like they get that. They're like, I want to protect my employees. I want to protect the community. They can really rally around those principles.
There's so much we can delve into that conversation, but we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about that connection and what CybrCastle is doing. And Sabrina, how God is using you. So you are listening to She Works for Him with your hosts, Katherine Gates and Martha Brangenberg. We'll be right back with more with Sabrina Donley.
Did you know that God has a calling on your life? It's true. He's called you to bring Jesus to the world. For some, that may look like a pulpit or a foreign mission field, but for most of us, it looks like a construction site, a cubicle, a hospital, or a classroom. Wherever it is that you work, live, volunteer, and invest, that is your mission field. To learn more about integrating your faith into your work and retirement, check out our books, I Work for Him, She Works for Him, and I Retire for Him, by going to iworkforhim.com/bookstore.
Welcome back to She Works for Him, where today we are getting to have a conversation with Sabrina Donley. And CybrCastle is the name of her family's company that she is representing in all that she does. And thank you, Sabrina, so much for being with us. Catherine, how about, what do you have for Sabrina right now?
Well, I also want to say Sabrina is offering a 30-day risk-free subscription to CybrCastle Defend. So you can learn more about that at CybrCastle.com. It's CYBRCastle.com. So you'll want to check that out. Sabrina, you've accomplished quite a lot you're very, very early in your career. How do you see your spiritual gifts? You talked a little bit about just how deep your relationship at such an early age, was with the Lord. How do you see your spiritual gifts coming into play through your work?
That is an awesome question. So my spiritual gifts tend to be in intercession, as well as prophecy, discernment, exhortation, and leadership. So I've always been a bit of a natural born leader in that sense. Like, I'm the type of person like, hey, if there's chaos, I'll make sure everyone kind of knows what they're doing, knows what to expect. Everyone has the best experience. Now, what's been really interesting in my role with family business and working with companies, discernment, prophecy, and intercession has been super interesting. So I do both business development and kind of channel partnership relationships, because most of our customers just come from people that it's generational blessing. My dad has poured into, or other people in our executive team have poured into in this community for 20, 30 plus years. And so it's a lot of me stewarding that. And it's also bringing other people into that ecosystem where we have an abundance mentality, and we can kind of share, and we can share customers, and we can share prayer and such. But sometimes there's things that on paper look perfect. Like, this company, this partner, this person has everything. They've got the expertise, they've got the specifications, but I'll just get this weird sense of like, there's something not quite right here. And I don't know what it is. And sometimes I only have a couple, a split second to make a decision of, do we go on a future partnership with this customer? And it's so interesting how almost without fail, 1, 2, 3, 6 months down the road, I'll see why that was a bad decision if we did go with that route. And there's other times, like, God will just bring to mind organizations or people will just kind of be introduced where I'm like, I don't really see how this fits, or how is this really going to be strategic? How's it going to be profitable? And God's like, no, just go for it. Be obedient. And it turns out to open the doors that we needed to go at the time. And it's like, I couldn't make this up. There's no way I could have done this on my own. So discernment is huge. It's also getting to the exhortation piece. It's helping people make a decision that betters their life. That's sales, but it's also, I get to pray for a lot of our people, which is so cool. Customers, or even I say, like, what's the biggest thing that's bothering you right now? Can I connect you with someone? Can I pray for you? And so there's that genuineness in it. And it also makes it so much more fun for me, because I love relationships and I love people. So, yes.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're building relationships. And I'm sure, as you talked about in our first segment, your time in the Word and just immersing yourself has really honed that discernment that you have.
Yes.
But when you come up against challenging seasons, where do you go for encouragement? And that could be people, resources, or even other organizations. Where do you find encouragement for yourself?
That's a great question. Community is definitely a big source of encouragement. In fact, At Work on Purpose has a recent young professional community that they've started, that just meeting like-minded, especially women professionals who are faith-driven, and just getting to talk real talk with them, whether it's work, life, personal, business. That has been huge for me. And also, of course, my awesome, amazing husband, Derek. He's fantastic. And he is such a compliment and such a teammate to me to be able to run those things by. And I'll say too that I am really thankful that my relationship with my dad is good. It wasn't always like that, but the fact that he has really listened to God, even some of the lessons he's learned. And if I'm getting overwhelmed, he's like, Sabrina, don't ask me for the answers. Go talk to God. Report back to me what he says. So it's kind of cool that it's part of my job description. Like, if I'm uncertain, he's like, go pray. He's your CEO ultimately. So yes.
Oh, that's so awesome.
I can't imagine some of our listeners right now thinking about that and how blessed you are to have that open dialogue like that within your organization, and to be encouraged that it can happen. Like, a lot of times we maybe just think that's not even possible. Like, how could, can I even pray on company time? Because maybe they're not the decision makers, but that is the power that we're given through the Holy Spirit to be able to do that. But I love that you could kind of look at it as part of your job description to go and do that. That's great.
It's one thing to be like, oh yeah, I pray at work. And another thing that my boss says, if you do not pray about this, you will not get the right answer. And you will not have the performance that we need, because this whole company is built on stewardship. And I'm like, no pressure there. Okay. So yeah, you got to live it. You can talk the talk, but you got to walk the walk.
So you mentioned your husband and you mentioned your dad as people that you probably maybe even put them in your category as like an accountability person or even a mentor. What a wonderful thing to have your dad in that kind of position. Where do you have an intentional mentor or accountability person outside of them that you're using to help keep you sharp?
Yes, I actually have several mentors in several areas. So one of them is a co-founder of a large logistics company in Cincinnati, and family business, ran it with her brother for many, many years. So cool to kind of see someone who's walked the walk in that.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's about the same age as me, similar gifting, and similar position where we can kind of be peers in that. And actually, I serve a lot in youth group and such, and our youth pastor is really awesome with kind of marriage. I call it Marriage University, like proactive working on our marriage as well as how to be a team. So I think having different mentors for different things is actually really important. So you can be wholehearted in all of it, but at the same time, like, make sure you're not letting one take priority over another in a sense.
Well, and intentionally segmenting that and knowing who you can go to with whatever you're dealing with. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with more on She Works for Him.
Hey, listeners, one of the huge projects Martha and I have been working on for years is making it easy for every workplace believer to find all the voices speaking encouragement and equipping into the faith and work movement. Presenting the Awaken Podcast Network, online at awakenpodcastnetwork.com. With over 130 different podcast voices speaking truth into you, the workplace believer, including over 30 podcasts dedicated to Christian working women. Go online to awakenpodcastnetwork.com. That's awakenpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome back to She Works for Him. Today we're talking with Sabrina Donley, who is a part of a family company, cybersecurity, and it's CybrCastle, CYBRCastle.com. If you want to learn more, and you can also, we had talked about, Sabrina, you said that you could even have people email you if people want to get connected through She Works for Him and have any questions or get more information about some consulting or anything like that. Sabrina.Donley@cybercastle.com. So Sabrina, you mentioned a little bit about community. We talked about that a little bit. And I would just like to delve into that just a little bit more. So what do you see as the biggest problem in your community that you know Jesus can bring healing to through your company?
Wow, that is such a good question. I think one of the big problems, I guess there's two that come to mind. One of them is isolation. I think that a lot of both longtime businesses and young people struggle with isolation. And actually, that was I'm all bubbly now and so many connections and stuff. But when I was in high school and going through a time, like I struggled with a lot of depression and times of just shutting everything out. Like, God, it's not even worth it. It's not worth it. So, and I think a lot of that comes through not having hope about the future of things, or hope about companies too that actually will align with their values and actually do good things and make hard decisions on the work side that will do things, but also just on the personal side of not having community. So I think with CybrCastle specifically, we have a huge emphasis on creating meaningful careers for people that don't necessarily have to get the Ivy League degree. Maybe they're just coming right out of high school. Maybe they're just going to technical school. And even some more like non-traditional routes. So they really feel like they can make an impact and also do it in a way that they can actually serve as well. I think on the isolation side, just, creating people in our company that also reach out to others, I think is a big emphasis. I think part of that too is that's also the church, but we are the church, right?
That's right.
Doing that. Isolation is the first one. The second thing is division. I mean, that is something when I was, I felt like God really clearly gave me the vision of being a bridge builder and being also half Chinese, half Scottish, British, Scandinavian, right? So my mom's originally from rural Ohio, so that's a fancy way of saying she's from Ohio. But I think actually being kind of a third culture kid, if you've heard that term before, it's given me a really deep curiosity about culture and about how do I find common ground with different things. And I feel like now CybrCastle organization, we are all about collaboration. That's one part. But even deeper than that, I feel like we as the church, which church is us, is we have to really be able to seek to understand when people are different than us. And a lot of the times there's elements of like, oh, wow, you actually understand God better in this sense than maybe I do based on my culture and what that's been like. So I think those are two things. CybrCastle helps in some ways, but also it's just, I am the church. We are the church. So.
And your company is the people that it's made up with. It's the culture. So that's the fact that you look to collaborate, that you look to listen, that you're never before did we need somebody who was looking to bridge those divides, right? We need that so badly. And that's wonderful. Sabrina, we're out of time, but if you could just give like a one short sentence, what would be your top tip for listeners regarding living out their faith at work? What's one little snippet that you could give them?
Biggest thing is tune into God and submit every email, every meeting, every connection to Him, and He will make your path straight.
I love that. Yes.
Very good. Sabrina Donley, thank you so much for being on She Works for Him today. We've appreciated hearing more about your heart.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Sabrina.
You've been listening to She Works for Him with your hosts, Catherine Gates and Martha Brangenberg. We're working Christian women, helping other Christian working women to live out their calling at work as she works for Him.
As Christian women, we have many roles. From daughter, sister, friend, wife, and mother to analyst, accountant, executive, or educator, is it possible to balance our roles at work and home in a way that honors God? The answer is yes, and our new book, She Works for Him, will help show you how. Written to celebrate, encourage, and equip women in the workforce, She Works for Him discusses the diverse experiences of today's Christian working woman. Pick up a copy by going to iworkforhim.com/bookstore. You've been listening to the She Works for Him podcast with your hosts, Catherine Gates, Nadia Dixon, and Martha Brangenberg. Please like us on Facebook and subscribe on YouTube under She Works for Him. And to access any of the resources we mentioned on today's show, see the show notes at sheworksforhim.com. That's sheworks4him.com. This podcast was created to empower you to live out your calling at work so the world knows she works for him.